Let's talk about how nutrition makes any kind of news splash. What are some of the themes that make a nutrition topic newsworthy? Before we talk about how nutrition makes the news, first we have to orient ourselves to why we're even talking about this. And really, in the field of nutrition and in health professions, we want nutrition to make the news because we want it to help people be healthier. But the challenge is that in order to be healthy, the actual tips don't really change that much. They're always the same. So you need to eat better food, move more, eating fruits and vegetables is always timeless. All of these things are kind of the same and they get kind of boring. So our challenge is how to make the old advice fresh and new, something that people want to learn about, want to read about, without diving into misinformation. So because we are in the health profession, we need to be careful that we're only giving evidence-based information. And a lot of this stays the same. One way to make nutrition interesting is to figure out how to relate nutrition to something that's going on. So the concept of timeliness. An easy way to do this is with the seasons. And so during the holidays, people are interested in cooking healthy for the holidays, or they might be, going into summertime, they want to know how to get swimsuit ready. Going back to school, they're looking for easy to pack school lunches. So some of that is seasonal and pretty easy to think about and try to take your topic and fit it into a season or a holiday. But you can also think about current events that are going on, and sometimes you can create topics that are interesting because of that current event. I have a picture of seaweed up at the top because it illustrates a time when we had a disaster happening in Japan where there was an earthquake and then a nuclear meltdown of the nuclear facilities, and people were being exposed to radiation or worried about being exposed to radiation. And the public health officials urged them to take potassium iodide tablets. And this was to protect their thyroid gland, to protect themselves from radiation. Well, this was interesting, and people started wondering, well, what is iodine? What is potassium iodine? What is it, and can I get it somewhere else? Do I have to take tablets? And so some savvy dietitians really latched on to this current event and pitched stories on where to get iodine in the food supply. Well, it turns out that seaweed is a really fantastic source of iodine, and so they were able to pitch this issue of timeliness and get in front of the news and talk about incorporating healthier foods into your diet, including sources of iodine. The technique of impact and proximity can be used to make a nutrition topic more interesting to an audience, and it's used a lot actually. These two techniques bleed into each other. They kind of overlap each other. So impact is when you take a nutrition topic and you go from the angle of the impact. So for example, stories on a certain diet will use impact by telling a story of somebody who used the diet and was successful and how they liked it and things like that. Or maybe you use impact in order to highlight the importance of food insecurity programs, and you use impact to talk about a story of a family who is struggling during times of their school going online because of COVID, for example. Proximity then is the technique where we apply the topic to the local community, to the audience's world. So you see this a lot in news segments where they say a local Arizona man was indicted on charges. They put that local Arizona in there, and that makes it interesting to the viewers who are in Arizona. If we were to do nutrition topics with proximity, we would do the same thing. So instead of talking about kids that go hungry over summer because they don't have access to school lunches, the proximity would talk about kids in Arizona. How many of them tend to go hungry? How many of them are underserved? And what programs exist in Arizona to serve them? Another technique that's used frequently is conflict. Conflict can be very interesting. An example from ASU, we have a professor, Dr. Glenn Geyser, who was very irritated by Dr. Oz. On Dr. Oz's show, they were talking about carbohydrates and calling it toxic and calling carbohydrates addictive. And Dr. Geyser believes that that's nonsense because he's an evidence-based practitioner. And so he posted a YouTube video calling out Dr. Oz. He used this technique of conflict, and it got the attention of the Dr. Oz producers. They actually invited him on the show to kind of debate the topic. So brilliant. He used that in order to at least give the evidence side of it to the audience. So conflict frequently starts with a question, who is to blame? Experts disagree on the best diet. Sugar may be dangerous. So it's sometimes called clickbait when conflict is used as a headline because it pulls the reader in. We're very enticed by this. We want to click on it and see what they're talking about and who's fighting. Another reason nutrition makes news is because a celebrity tried it or announced it or has something to do with it. So, for example, when Tom Hanks went public with his type 2 diabetes diagnosis, all of a sudden the public was a little more interested in learning about diabetes, and savvy health professionals were able to pitch stories based on this to help people learn about type 2 diabetes. What is it? Can it be prevented? How do we prevent it? How is it treated? How do people live with type 2 diabetes? I've got another example here of a nutrition story that is dovetailing off of Tom Brady's diet. So Tom Brady, bless him, he does great winning Super Bowls. He's got some interesting nutrition beliefs that sometimes he talks about in the public. And sometimes these nutrition beliefs are not based on actual scientific evidence. So this story was about his chef eliminates something called nightshades from him and his wife's diet. Nightshades is just the group name for things like eggplant, but also peppers and tomatoes and potatoes. They're all in the nightshade family. And so Tom Brady's chef eliminates these for some weird reason that actually does not have any scientific evidence behind it. However, this then creates the opportunity for health experts to talk about nightshades. All of a sudden, the public is interested in what is a nightshade. Is it dangerous? Should I eliminate it? And so it gives us the opportunity to talk about the health benefits of nightshades, because in fact there are health benefits. These are really healthy foods. You don't want to eliminate them, and here's why. So we can dovetail off of this celebrity story to get information to the public. Another angle that is used quite often is this angle of fear. And this is it's very similar to conflict, but basically stories that play on our fear tend to be irresistible. And they also tend to be not quite accurate. So we need to be aware of these stories. Up on the top, I've got a picture of somebody that calls herself the Food Babe. You may be familiar with the Food Babe. You may be a fan of the Food Babe. She does very well in communicating with the public. However, she uses a lot of misinformation. So a lot of what she says is based on fear-based messages, and they're not accurate. The picture that you see, she became well known because she called out Subway for using what she called the yoga mat chemical in their bread. Well, it turns out that there is a chemical that helps create air pockets, and so this chemical is edible. It's not something that's dangerous, and it is used in the process of making bread because it makes a fluffier bread. It creates those air products. But it can also be used in plastics to make air bubbles in a plastic material, like a yoga mat. You want air pockets in a yoga mat because that makes for a cushier experience when you're doing yoga. But there's nothing to fear with this chemical. However, because she was able to make it sound scary and play on this so-called chemophobia in the public, she was able to get a lot of media attention and gained a lot of followers. She does this technique a lot. She picks out a scary sounding chemical and calls out the alarms and goes after industry for using this chemical when in fact it's not really something that needs to be feared. So fear presents a risk and then presents your vulnerability to that risk, but then it provides tips to avoid the risk. Another way to make food topics or nutrition topics interesting is to tap into this how-to angle, or sometimes to figure out a way to call it a hack. And so you can start any kind of topic with how to lose weight while still eating fast food, how to cut calories from your diet, how to be a college student and not gain weight. Basically, it just it provides a new approach, or what seems like a new approach, to the same old issue that people have. How do we lose weight? How do we get fit? How do we cook? How do we prep food? There are key buzzwords that are frequently used that indicate that you are viewing a how-to information piece. And so if they're saying easy techniques to get your bikini body, or quick and secret, these are buzzwords that are frequently used. TikTok in particular is having a huge moment with food hacks and how-to hacks. And in fact, there's always a trendy recipe that's going around that's more of a food hack that people found or viewed on TikTok. A technique that's used to sell food products as well as fad diets is novelty. So novelty is enticing to us because we get bored. Many of you, I think all of you, are old enough to remember the unicorn frappuccino phase of our society when a certain age group was really in love with these particular beverages from Starbucks. And, you know, of course, they were a limited time, and so they created this sense of urgency. They were new, they were unique, they were fresh, but you can't find them anymore because they no longer fit that bill. And so this food company has to come up with new beverages, and they do all the time. They play on this novelty to keep you interested and to keep you coming back. If you walk through the grocery store, just pay attention to this, how many food companies are playing on novelty to entice you to buy their particular product. As I said, fad diets use novelty. I've got an example of a fad diet here, a book that's saying, you know, the taco cleanse. And the reason this might work is because of the novelty. It's so different, it's fresh, it's innovative. And hopefully you can lose weight when you go on this taco cleanse. Hopefully you know this is probably not a magic diet. And then TikTok again is really revolutionary on this novelty aspect. A lot of viral videos on TikTok go viral because of this novelty aspect. You may have remembered a TikTok trend with this recipe where you use a block of feta cheese and some garlic and tomatoes, and you bake it and put it over pasta, and somehow people were riveted by this because it was just so fresh. It was such a fresh way, a new way of doing kind of an old recipe. And in fact, feta cheese flew off of the shelves when this was popular. Today there's another recipe going around. Tomorrow there'll be another one, and they all play on novelty. Going along with novelty, new research tends to be one way to get the media's attention. And so keeping your eye on nutrition journals and watching for studies that come out is something that a lot of health professionals do if they want to pitch stories to the media. They pitch the story based on new studies that have been released, and that's what really gives them that angle. It gives them that in. And so you see this all the time in various news stories. They're tied to a new study. One of my favorite techniques is the power of a number. So making a list and tying it with a number. Once you notice this technique, you can't stop seeing it everywhere. So when you are in front of a newsstand, in front of a magazine rack, look at the covers of the magazines, because they will almost always have at least one story that's on that cover that is the power of a number. So you see on the very left there, Men's Health, 49 all new moves, arms, abs, and more. Think how your brain reacts to that. And think about the alternative if it just said new moves, arms, abs, and more. That wouldn't be as interesting, but because they put that number, 49, that makes our brain want to pay attention because they've put like a handle on it for us. We say, okay, I'm going to skim this and pick out ones that I like. And so it's intoxicating. We can't resist it. 11 reasons why too much sugar is bad for you. That is probably more enticing than saying why you should avoid sugar. So think of the power of a number. Almost every nutrition topic or food topic that you can think of can probably be made a little bit more powerful by using this number technique instead.